Power's gone out, it's dark, you're cold. You think to yourself, wait, I've got a couple of tea light candles and some terracotta pots. I know exactly what to do. I can make a heater, keep my house warm, keep my family safe. This is Urban Sentinel, and let's get into it. Tea light heaters. You see a lot of videos show up, especially during wintertime, like it is right now, as a means to heat your house, keep you warm during those conditions to which you either had no control over or you aren't quite capable of adapting to the situation. It's all well and good, and it has a good train of thought, but there are a lot of problems with it, and we're going to talk about it. First and foremost, if you're going to use any type of open flame, any type of fire system to keep warm, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, and know how to use a fire extinguisher and have one on hand. Those are the three things that you always have to make sure you do. Fireplace, kerosene heater, oil lamp, tea light heater, just a candle sitting, in a old tuna fish can. Does not matter. You need to have those. Now, with that being said, the tea light heater is easy to use. I'll show you one that I have, and it's effective to a limited extent. Definitely not heating a house. It will not do that. Make no mistake. You're not heating a 5,000 square foot, 2,000 square foot, 1,000 square foot, nothing. It's not good for large rooms, especially rooms that have high ceilings, anything relatively speaking over 7 feet. And it's not going to do much in a room of, let's say, 200 square feet. Envision one of two things: something the size of an average bathroom, 6x9, or you're sitting at a kitchen table. The table's roughly 3x5, 3x6, and you're seated at the table, and the tea light's in the middle of the table. That effective area for the people sitting nearby, 18 to 20 inches, you'll feel the warmth. Yes, the terracotta does get hot. It does create a convection system of drawing in the cooler air and heating it up and pushing it out and radiating the heat. A candle by itself can reach temperatures of over 1,000 degrees, but the number of candles, tea lights that you would need to generate enough heat to warm the room would be far more than the number of terracotta pots you have. You'd have a fire hazard, not to mention carbon monoxide. That's a quick way to say goodnight, Gracie, permanently when that builds up in the room that you're in beyond your capability to move that air circulation through and get new oxygen in. And you will be lights out for good, and you'll be one of those fatalities that you hear about on the news the next day. Tea light heaters are a short term, a temporary term. It is more psychological than physiological. It's meant to provide a certain level of mental comfort, a little bit of calm, a little bit of ease. And yeah, if you're in the dark and you've got the flickering lights of the candles going and you've got that nearby radiant heat, your brain gets calm, you're able to think a little bit clearly. You may now start to come up with a plan, a better way to stay warm, a better way to get yourself out of the situation that you're in. But using that with the idea of that will be your heat source, that will keep you going, it's not going to work, because to generate more heat, you need more candles, more flame, more risk of fire. Also, more carbon monoxide goes out. To generate the heat that you need to keep yourself warm, it needs to be in a closer, tighter area, which again, you're running that same circles. The smaller the area, the warmer you'll get, the greater chances you have of suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning or catching yourself on fire, plain and simple. So again, the tea light heater, it's not necessarily a novelty. It can be used for the purpose to provide a minimum amount of heat. Keeping the fingers and toes warm at close quarters, that's what you're really going to be doing. You're really not going to be heating up too much of a room. You will feel the difference if you have it in, let's say, as I said before, your kitchen, and you come from the next room over where its ambient temperature is almost equal to outside. When you walk into that kitchen, you will feel a slight warming of air, but still nothing of significance that if you're just standing on the outer edge of it, you're going to still have a little shiver going on when you're there until you get closer to the source. All right, so right here, my tea light heater. Now, a couple things. Number one, I only have it on this mat, so I'm not scratching up the top of my freezer chest. But what you want to do is whatever the candles are that you're using, it's preferable to have them either in a base of the terracotta pots made out of the same material, or some other type of metal container. Obviously, you don't want anything that's flammable. And while, yes, the metal will radiate some heat, there's less heat transfer in the fashion that it's going to catch something on fire. But again, you always got to be conscious of the surface that you have it on and the immediate surrounding area. So even if you think about putting it on your kitchen counter, do you have cabinets above your counter in which there's a possibility that there's still going to be some radiant heat that could possibly ignite the material of the countertop or of the cabinet? So these are things you think about ahead of time. Move, napkins out of the way, dishcloths, all that sort of stuff. With this, I'm able to put probably up to 10 tea light candles in it. The overall size of the pot covers almost the entire length. So if I needed to, I could light that number of candles up, put them inside. Now, on the inside, it's 2 pots. This outer pot that you see, and then this second pot here. Now, what I'm using is an 8-inch carriage bolt, several washers, and a couple of nuts, and it's pretty much a simple setup. I'm just going to try to undo this real quick for you. All you're doing is you feed the carriage bolt through the first washer, and you put that through here, and then just tip it upside down, and after that you're pretty much rinsing and repeating the process on the inside. I just want to show you a better angle. Now if you look down in here, you can see that there's another washer, and it's partially wedged inside, or the nut rather is partially wedged inside the washer here, and it's basically retention. This nut presses onto this washer, giving it support for the inside. There we go. And then underneath there's another washer with a retaining nut there, and the last one on top. So when you put it all together, they'd sit like that. Now with that, the radiant heat from the tea lights or from your candles coming up, heating up on the inside, as well as starting to radiate heat around here. The hot air traveling up into it, warming the air around here. So when it's sitting up on top, you'll effectively have most of the heat coming in this area, trapped in the chamber, and directly underneath, radiating it out. And as I said, a convection, the cooler air all around it, going into the tray and circulating under here, moving up and moving around. So effectively at this area, moving out, you'll feel the heat. You'll feel the heat up top. This actually will become very hot. So it's, again, something you have to be aware of, that if you have to move it for whatever reason, you want to be able to, at the minimum, grab hold. If you got pot holders, pick it up, move it out the way, but you have to be conscious of the fact that the metal here will be hot. If you're using a metal tray, that will also be hot. If you're using the ceramic or bottom base for most of these pots that you would buy, then you should be all right. And keynote on that, you want unglazed. You don't want them to have a finish or any type of paint on it for 2 reasons. One, the porousness of the material, the terracotta, is what helps also pass and radiate the heat. If it's glazed, it's sealed outside and in. And if it's painted, there's also the chance that even though it may not look it on the outside, that paint is basically starting to vaporize in tiny little particles going up into the air, and you're breathing that in, and that adds one more layer of toxicity that you need to be conscious of, and you don't want to have to deal with that. So tea light heaters as a means of survival for preppers in emergency circumstances, I'm going to say no. There are many other ways, even simple ways, to stay warm using a tea light heater for the cost and the time that it takes. Expense-wise, not that expensive. I think, if I remember, the ceramic pots, they were on sale at a garden store. The carriage bolt, the nuts and the washers, they probably cost me less than $5 total. It's for what it's worth. You're not spending a lot to get the results that you're getting, but understand that you're going to get minimal results. You're not going to get the large-scale, grand, easy plan of we will heat our home and not have to worry about anything else afterwards. It's something that, yes, as a skill, as a technique to know how to do, and for the limited time period that it would be effective until you can do something better, absolutely. But like I said before, it's one of those things where if you're in an absolute pinch and that's the only thing you can do, then do it. but there's still better ways, other ways to heat, stay warm, that are much more effective and to a greater extent, less dangerous. I mean, yes, oil lamps are great. The primary risk is if for some reason that oil lamp gets knocked over, you have broken glass and you have flammable oil all over the place. So that's always a risk. And also too, with the oil lamps, the resource that you need to keep it going is something that while you can buy a lot of it, it's still in limited amounts that might be available to you at the time period that you're using them. Things that run on batteries, same principle. You know, battery generated heaters, those little hand warmers, those can be great too for short periods of time. But once again, you need either a way to recharge them or to replace the batteries to keep them going. So it's always a matter, there's always going to be pros and cons. There's not going to be one single solution in circumstances like that. Even the thought of layering up, you can only put on so many physical layers to the extent that you almost become uncomfortable, and then you start taking them off again and you begin to immediately lose the benefits that you were gaining. And depending upon how cold it is, sometimes layering your body up is not going to be as sufficient as insulating the room that you're in. Blankets over the windows, plugging up gaps in the floors, underneath the doors, things like that. Moving furniture around to build yourself a little fort, a little inside tent. Even the idea of having a small tent to put up inside your apartment, inside your house, and then put the blankets inside there, drape a blanket over the top, that would be a much better solution to trying to keep warm in an emergency situation. An inexpensive $40 to $60 tent that you can set up real quick, a nice little geodome style tent, throw a blanket over the top, put it into the corner of a room, keep it away from the drafts, put your blankets, your sleeping bags, that stuff inside. You do much better that way if it's a matter of just trying to stay warm and stay alive until sunrise. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll catch you in the next one.